Build creative confidence. Beat the inspiration addiction. Join the Writer's Gym. Alison Littlewood is my guest on the podcast today. She is also writing as Ava Morwood and AJ Elwood, and has written some of my favourite stories in 3 names, which is probably a record. Alison hails from deepest, darkest Yorkshire, England, where she lives in a 300-year-old house that creaks and whispers around her as she types. She enjoys exploring the hills and dales with her partner Fergus and 2 beloved Dalmatians, Dex and Vesper. In her other life, she has written a number of novels, including the Richard and Judy book club bestseller, A Cold Season. Other titles include Mistletoe, The Hidden People, The Crow Garden, The Unquiet House, A Cold Silence, and Path of Needles. As AJ Elwood, she has published Cottingley, Cuckoo and The Other Lives of Miss Emily White. Her short stories have been selected for several best-of anthologies and published in her collections Quieter Paths, The Flowering, and A Curious Cartography. She has won the Shirley Jackson Award for short fiction. You can find more about Alison at alisonlittlewood.co.uk and avamorwood.com. Alison Littlewood, E.J. Elwood, Shirley Jackson Award-winning Richard and Judy pick everything author, and now with really exciting news just as we record.
Yeah, I did have some lovely news recently. So I have a new book coming out with Harper North, which will be in April next year, under the name Ava Morwood.
It's just so lovely that we talk about this while it's so fresh, because I've been reading your stuff and we've shared a publisher for certain things, and there's so much that I'd love to chat to you about, but I feel like the news is so exciting that I almost want to fast forward and start there. But before I do, I'd love to just quickly ask you a bit about coming to writing and whether writing was always part of your life, if this was always the direction it was going or you wanted it to go.
Yeah, writing probably wasn't always part of my life, no, but reading always was. Right from being obsessed with fairy tales when I was 5 years old. The first one that I just fell in love with was The Little Mermaid. And, you know, it made me cry my heart out, but I just loved it as well. And I think that power that words have sunk deep into me and didn't let go, really. But I wasn't, I always thought that writing was something that other people did. And kind of put writers on a pedestal and thought that there's some otherworldly beings that I couldn't possibly do that. So it was only when I was in my 30s that I joined a local writing class and thought, either try it or put that secret dream away of having a book with your name on it. It was kind of put your money where your mouth is moment. And I just took it from there, really. Fell in love with writing more and more and got drawn to writing darker things, because I hadn't always been particularly focused on darker genres when I was reading. I used to read anything and everything, classics, all sorts of stuff. I'd read all the Booker winners and things like that. And, so more literary fiction and mainstream fiction and my brother Stephen King novels and just a mixture of everything that I put my hands on, really.
You said your brother's Stephen King novels. Are they still his, or do you feel like Stephen King is yours now?
Oh, he's mine now. All mine now. Yeah,
I would have thought. And
yeah, in fact, I've probably got some of his on my shelf. Don't tell him.
I love hearing that. I don't think this ever stops being exciting and important when we hear authors that we read say, I thought writing kind of belonged to somebody else and I only discovered it. I think that sort of, it's almost like the fundamental imposter syndrome that's there even before anything else is, that we've got this idea that A, it belongs to somebody else, B, it belongs to anybody at all. Did you find that changed? Well, question, I guess, full stop, but because for most of us, I don't think it ever really quite goes away, but what's that been like for you? Has it changed? Has it evolved?
I think it's getting over that weird kind of pressure that we put on ourselves when it comes to writing. And like you say, it seems to be in this field and almost no other. If somebody takes up running, they're not expected to be in the Olympics tomorrow. They're not expected to put in stellar star performances right from the off. But somehow, I think because we read books and they're the finished result, but we don't actually see all the work that goes into them behind the scenes and all the craft and the years of learning and all the months and months of editing, we don't see all that. So kind of this impression that people just wrote that straight down, and we expect to be able to do that ourselves. And so there's this weird pressure that we put on ourselves that as soon as you sit down and write, you've got to be Shakespeare. And it's getting rid of that and actually just being free to write. You know, I think it's Ernest Hemingway that said the first draft of anything is shit. You know, when I start to find writing difficult, which I still do sometimes, even now, I mean, I had quite a difficult year last year, just trying to get ideas going again, thinking, oh, you can still do this. It became a bit of a mantra, just feel free to write shit, which it sounds quite insulting, but it's sort of what you have to do, just to get something down and get things flowing again. And when the flow sort of starts going again, then you can start to work on that or write something else or build on it, or at least it just gets you back into the flow, and then it starts to become fun again. Because really writing, I do have to remind myself sometimes of what Stephen King said, which is that it's a playground. This is fun. You know, this is a joy. Books have always been a joy to me. So, you know, I do have to remind myself occasionally that this whole thing is a joy. You know, I'm able to do what I love and keep on living in that world of stories, which is just what we all love, isn't it, really? So
yeah, and it's the more unique, the more fun the more itself, the more fun you're having. That's the benign circle, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. It's when you start to feel like you're really playing, then you become freer on the page, I think, and it shows the prose starts to sparkle a bit more. Yeah,
and this is very close to my heart and day right now, because for reasons of wider world stuff, you know, it's not been the easiest week, and when nasty things are happening in the wider world, it becomes even harder, and I think even more important to remember that our contributions are unique. So I mean, I don't know if I think we all do, but I've had moments where that block does tend to be either I haven't found the fun, or I have something I really, really, really want to say. And that's kind of where I've been this week. And the block feels stronger, I think, when there's an idea I really care about. Is that an equation for you that I don't know if it's maybe earlier on with ideas, or have there been ideas that one falls into the trap of trying to do justice to something rather than having fun with it?
There is that sense sometimes of who on earth am I? Why would anyone want to hear my voice, kind of thing? And I think it tends to be more among female writers as well. I don't tend to hear many men saying that, you know, perhaps they just find it easier to be heard in life. So that doesn't kind of lodge itself in the brain quite as much. But I don't know. I try not to think about the outside world too much, to be honest, when I write. I try not to think about writing as a business either, because when you start getting books published, your book is also a product on a shelf and it's a sales unit and all of that stuff. That's kind of necessary in order to be out there and be published, but it's almost really contrary to what books mean to me and why I love them. They are a joy and they're kind of magical. So, you know, there's this kind of otherworldly bubble which I like to be in, where the stories kind of live and the business side. And I'm just very glad that I've got a good editor, a good agent these days, you know, who can take some of that away and handle negotiations and think about sales and things like that. So I can put that side of things away and just revel in the kind of writing space.
And that takes us very neatly on to what Ollie Munson, and that's your agent, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
AM Heath. And you have very good news for us this week.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, I have the cheat sheet. I have the statement here. But would you like to talk about it?
Yeah. So I wrote a novel which, funnily enough, it goes back to that book that I fell in love with first. It's kind of a take on The Little Mermaid. But it's about a woman who's leaving the coast behind her, and it's got a classic kind of love triangle as there is in The Little Mermaid, except she's not the magical mermaid, she's the wife, and her husband had an affair with a younger, more beautiful wild swimmer that he met at the coast. And she's going to pull them away from that and move to the landlocked Peak District. But then this is where my kind of dark side comes in and my love of folk tales. Because the Peaks, it seems like every little pool there has its own mermaid legend. So these mermaid legends start, it's almost as if they're in front of her at every turn and confronting her and making her face up to the past. Some of the stories are also quite murdery, and it turns into a bit of a contemporary thriller as well. So yeah, this is what I've been working on for quite a long time. And Ollie brilliantly sent it to the offices of Harper North. So it's HarperCollins Manchester team, and they loved it and picked it up. And yeah, kind of the rest is history. We signed contracts on a 2-book deal, and it's coming out in April under the name Ava Morwood. And that's going to be in hardback and audio and ebook. And the cover's amazing. And yeah, it's all getting very exciting. It's at that lovely stage where we've kind of gone through copy editing, and I'm kind of really happy with it. And the cover's just looking great, and it's starting to feel like it's going to be a book, you know?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
And going from Littlewood, Elwood, Morwood. When I saw Morwood, I thought, oh yeah, well, what happened there? What was that? Your choice? Is that a story? The Woods.
I mean, AJ Elwood was when I moved to Titan, and they wanted to. I mean, I was doing some books that are bound up in, have links to historical neo-Victorian stuff, and they wanted to put a new identity on that. Ava Morwood came about because Harper are quite excited about the book, and they're wanting to get it into supermarkets and get big distribution if they can. And I think once, I'm known as Alison Littlewood, I've been bouncing around kind of horror shelves and mid-lists, and supermarkets probably going to think that's not going to do the numbers for us. So yeah, they're relaunching it, and it has got more of a thriller kind of feel. So it looks a bit different. It looks more of a classic thriller, maybe with weird elements. So it's a slightly different angle as well. So yeah, it's time for a fresh look.
But I guess hearing you talk about keeping I don't know if privacy is the word, but going back into your writing space and maintaining the fact that you don't want to think about, you don't need to think about the outside world while you're there. I'm wondering, because I was curious about the different names and whether there was a sort of different, if there was a sort of evolution or a different voices thing going on for you. But I guess for you, it's more about ignoring all of that and coming back to it. Just get into your own space. I
do kind of like to leave that to the marketing department, to be honest. Yeah. It's like genre, isn't it? People tend to bill me as a horror writer because my first book was classic, it's the horror, it was deals with the devil, that kind of thing. My second book really was crime meets fairy tales. And if my third book was going to be crime meets fairy tales, they would have badged it crime, because my next plan was a ghost story, and that was more under horror, albeit kind of the softer side of horror. They kept my second one badged as horror as well. And then I did the historical stuff, which is, things like the hidden people in the Crow Garden that are set in Victorian times, and then they're more kind of, they're strange, but they're perhaps not full on horror sort of books, and they were badged as mainstream fiction. So I've actually kind of moved around a bit and given myself new challenges, I think, because if I tried to just write the same book again, it would feel a bit like that thing about product again. It would feel like just trying to turn out another box on the shelf that looks like the last one, and I would get bored, and I think I'd probably stop learning things, and that wouldn't kind of do it for me. I have to keep setting myself different challenges, and you just learn as a writer, and you keep moving forward, don't you?
And it's so interesting, because I guess for some people having the different names is a bit like having different shoes, that, like how actors get into characters, you might have a sort of hat or shoe that gives that permission to step into something else. But I think it's so important to stress that it is different for different writers, that I think you're almost, the way that you talk about it is such an attractive thought to me, because it's none of that. It's getting into your own space, getting into your own head, and almost seeing what happens next.
Yeah, quite. I don't kind of think, oh, I want to write a Littlewood book now, or I want to write I do kind of follow the stories and the ideas that I have. And I'm a little bit obsessive, I think. I'm just very immersed in one project at a time. So I like to just bury myself away in it. And, I can't do what some people do and write 3 things at once, which I know some people find that very motivating, because if they get stuck on one, they go on to another and they can keep a flow going. Personally, I just have to be in one world at a time. Yeah, it's living in that bubble again, I suppose.
Can I say Dalmatian owner? Is it all right to out them?
Yeah, you certainly can. There's one snoozing on the chair behind me. So.
They are very welcome to our YouTube channel if they would like to. Furry creatures always welcome. But as a woman who is owned by canines, I'm genuinely interested in how you make not just your own sort of ritual and your own writing time, separate to the outside world. But I mean, when I had a cat, having those boundaries was important and not always easy. That, we take the photos and it all looks lovely. You sort of write as animals, but they are the ultimate sort of having to find your boundaries judge. I think that, it can be quite difficult. And I guess with human beings in your family as well, to find how to make the time, but also get up and interact. Any tips on making that work?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There is that thing as well that if you're just kind of writing and you study at home, people think you're available all the time. So yeah, I can get a bit fierce about, no, I actually have work to do now, But, I mean, I'm very lucky to do this full time. So I think I kind of have a good balance really of family time and dog time. And because we walk the dogs together every morning, get some air and exercise, and that kind of wakes me up for the day. And then I have a long stretch in the afternoon where I'm just buried away in words or whatever, or proofing or whatever it happens to be. Yeah, I have one dog that's a very expert pest. If she decides it's a tea time at 2:00 in the afternoon, she'll come and she'll kind of look at me, and then she'll start pawing at the arms on my chairs. If she nudges them up and make a noise like that, and she's very good at starting to knock them. And she'll go under my desk, and I have one of those footrests. I have quite an ergonomic setup, and she'll start putting upon that because it makes a scraping noise. Don't know if you hear that.
I do.
So she will really. She has strategies of pestering, but yeah.
But the fact that you have written so many wonderful things while also living with dogs, I'm guessing you're good at winning the argument when you need to, or saying not yet when you need to.
Yeah, I use whole sentences. She understands it's not time for anything yet now, and she'll just kind of huff and go away. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Yeah. But I guess dogs don't understand everything you tell them.
But it's the power of routine as well, isn't it? That they know, right? We get walked with you in the morning, and then you do your strange human thing that you do, typing and writing and so on. And then is there a sort of end of day point that they recognise?
Yeah, probably. I tried to build some exercise in these days because, I hit the age of 50 and wasn't very fit or healthy, and writing isn't particularly fit or healthy. I mean, I have a good ergonomic setup, but that I thought, it's really time to do something. So I got a treadmill and started running. So I'll tend to break off, try and have a run, and that's kind of it then. That's the end of the day.
And both you and dog recognise.
The dogs just kind of bark at the treadmill. That's their contributions.
Oh. I wondered, actually, in terms of rituals, there's times of days that work for different people. Like, obviously, life circumstances absolutely come into it. But I really feel like I used to believe that I was supposed to be able to write at night. And my creative brain, it's diminishing returns after about 6 p.m, probably, certainly 7 or 8 p.m. It's like I have to do 5 times as much concentration to get a line that would have just come out of me during the day. Do you have sort of things you've worked out don't work for you, or things like that?
I kind of want to say the whole write every day thing, which isn't to say that I don't write most days, but I find if I write every single day for a sustained period of time, the tanks just run dry and it starts to feel like a real strain. I mean, if I'm up against a deadline, I will kind of keep going. But what I tend to try and do is aim to write every day. But then if I have a day when I just feel a bit drained, just take a day off. So it can be a bit spontaneous, and I'm lucky that it can be spontaneous. Yeah, I do find that you have to be a little bit kind to yourself now and then, don't you? And just like give your head a break and go out for the day or do something else. Or
You're reminding me of a conversation that I've had with my physiotherapist, because I have an ongoing knee injury issue, and it used to be that doing physio every day was absolutely the point, and that was what turned me around health-wise. But now, touch wood, that I'm at a certain stage where the health is fundamentally there. If I take a day off, that's not going to sink the ship. And it sort of feels a bit similar, that it's in you, the process is in you, it's part of your life. So if you take a day off, it's going to be genuinely taking a day off because that's the right thing for you. Whereas I guess at an earlier stage, it might have been wobblier.
Yeah, I guess. And I suppose when you have that underlying discipline and you've built up a certain level of whether it's physical strength or whether it's words on a page, then it doesn't vanish overnight if you take a day off. It's if you take 2 weeks off, then it's going to start feeling unnatural again, and it's something you have to kind of fight to get back into. I think it's very similar to physical work or exercise in that regard, isn't it? If you take 2 days off running, the next one's always going to be a bit of a nightmare, and it won't be fun, and it'll just feel like an effort, and it's like, what am I doing? Who does this? It's just weird.
Who does this? Why are we doing this? But it's so ironic, isn't it? Because that brings us back to that idea that people don't get imposter syndrome about running. They know that running's gonna get better as you do more of it, and as you find your way of bringing it into your life. And yet as writers, we're so good at the thing that I see on this podcast again and again, and with Writers Gym members now, everyone's apps. It doesn't matter how many awards anybody's got, there's still somebody in their head who's a proper writer and they're not. It's like it's sort of
quite, I think it's kind of almost, it ought to get easier. And you ought to be able to rest on your laurels a bit. But actually, I think the more we train as writers and improve our skills, the more we're also training our inner editors. And, I could be quite fiendish with my own work now and really rip it to bits when I start editing and rewriting. That kind of strengthening of the editor in me also makes that inner editor's voice even stronger, the one that's kind of trying to rip you to shreds before you're even at the end of a paragraph. So you kind of make the hurdles bigger for yourself as you go along as well.
It's so interesting that, because it does seem to be that way, but at the same time there's also maybe something in the evidence that you can look on a bookshelf and go, me. You've got the evidence that it exists, that the end of that, oh God, this is wrong, that's wrong, the end of that process can still be a very successful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, you do always have that knowledge that you can get to the end, you can just polish.
That's it, isn't it? That you can get to the end. That's what the evidence does. The evidence does at least change that Yeah,
for sure. There's no taking that away from you, is there really, once you've... And I suppose there are nice milestones, like if somebody's starting out, there are nice milestones to aim for, that, whether it's trying to get your first short story in your first publication, once you've done it, nobody can take that away, and then you can aim for the next thing and the next thing.
And trust that everybody else is doubting themselves, giving themselves a hard time as well.
Yeah, and, I think it's quite motivating going to conventions and spending time with other writers, because, there are people at events that I admire who terrible imposter syndrome and, I never feel like I've finished learning how to write. There does tend to be that thing that sometimes you get new writers on the scene who are incredibly confident. And I know somebody who teaches courses, and a group once said to him, "Don't bother about teaching us how to write. We know how to write, just tell us how to get published." And actually, I think if you have that attitude that you've got nothing to learn, then you'll learn nothing. The day I think I know how to write is probably the day I stop writing, because I think there's always something more to learn. There's always further to go, which is what keeps me kind of motivated and interested in coming back. So I think that almost lack of confidence that, and when I hear a top writer saying, oh, I really struggled with this one, or I thought I'd never get through this wall, I think it's really a motivating thing. And, it's why it's so great when you can spend time with other writers, especially if you're not kind of surrounded by people where you live who love the same things that you do. It's lovely when you can come together and be with your tribe and motivate each other.
And there's something in when you talk about being on the conventions and being around writers that you look up to, there's that sort of dual thing going on. I think that one of the things that's lovely about the conventions is that, yes, we are all feeling like that. I am feeling like that about you. There is all of that. But there's also, right alongside that, the fact that there is that equality, that you understand that everybody is a writer. It's not like a sort of, people queuing for autographs and people signing the autographs. There's none of that kind of separation. Everybody's people.
Sure. Yeah, we all kind of love the same thing ultimately, don't we? We all love stories, and we've got so much in common.
It just reminds me, years and years and years ago, I was talking to this musician who possibly wasn't all that happy in what he was doing, but I said essentially that but when you meet people in audiences, they're interested in something you're interested in, they love something, and that just did not land at all. There was such a separation between, and I don't think he was speaking for all of his. I don't think he was speaking for musicians everywhere at all. But it was just very interesting to me that I think it just reminds me how lucky we are that we are in a community that is genuinely celebratory and supportive. That everybody does love writing, and everybody knows that writers need encouragement and support to find their uniqueness.
Plus, we all spend so much time in a room on our own with a laptop. It's nice to get out.
Yeah, it absolutely
and it's just
is.
nice to get out, isn't it? And spend time with each other. And so perhaps we appreciate that more than maybe sports people who are in teams and are around each other every day and maybe get sick of each other. I don't know, but yeah.
Was there anyone either at the conventions or in other environments, were there sort of mentors who were particularly helpful for you?
Do you know, it's funny because before we had this conversation, I was thinking about, distance travelled as a writer. And one of the things I was always quite scared about was things like public speaking. I was absolutely terrified of anything like that. And even when I went to my first fantasy con, I think it was 2011, I was in an anthology where there was a signing and I was terrified even to do the signing. So I kind of sat down and I was sitting, I remember there was Simon Bestwick and Stephen Volk on one side and Rob Shearman on the other. And I kind of said, I'm quite nervous. I don't know what to do. And Simon just said, well, you can sign your name, can't you? But in a nice way, it kind of, they kind of took me in hand and they were so friendly and welcoming. And, I thought of them as being like my signing uncles. So I've been friends with them ever since. And it was just lovely as an introduction. And, I've kind of gone from there into doing readings. And my first reading was a showcase for Black Static magazine, which is folded now. The editor's doing Remains magazine instead. But Ramsey Campbell was in the audience. No pressure then. But Ramsey was, such a lovely, encouraging presence. So nice of him to go along and support new writers and things that, I've been quite lucky really in the people that I've met and who've helped me along.
And the kind of luck that we absolutely make for ourselves is making the time to invest in the writing that allows you to explore yourself, allows you to develop and gets you there. And I love hearing it. I really feel with you that I can, like, the enjoyment of the process. I can see you enjoying that process and that space.
Yeah, for sure. And I am enjoying it. And it's always a privilege. It's not always that, I have difficult times as well as the next person. Last year I found it quite difficult to get into a flow and I felt like ideas had kind of dried up a bit. And it was a bit of a tough year. And I think it was a combination of maybe just needing a bit of time for the tanks just to refill, and a combination of knowing when to sort of force it and just sit down and write anything. And short stories are so good for this, especially if somebody gives you a brief. Yeah, I really want to write for that, so I'm going to come up with an idea. And having a deadline and a theme thrown at you can be so inspiring and motivating. And writing short stories, novellas, even are really good just to get you into the flow again and get ideas flowing and just refill those creative batteries. So it swings and roundabouts. There are tougher times, definitely. But yeah, I do feel extraordinarily lucky to be able to do what I do. And I try not to lose sight of that.
It's exactly why I invented the sponsored write way back when, that it was wanting to raise money for Macmillan in memory of my friend, but it was also that exactly what you're talking about, that a deadline and a theme, and in the case of that with the charity, it almost takes the pressure off, because it's like, I don't need this to be good, I need it to exist. It's not, it has to be good, it has to be good,
Yeah.
this has to exist, this will make money for the charity regardless, and it does lift that pressure. But anthologies and short story calls and things like that are fantastic for that. Do you find, I know you said one project at a time, is that the same with short stories?
It is, yeah. Although I am a muller sometimes. If I have a deadline to hand something in, I like to draft things quite early, put them aside and work on something else for a bit. So in between drafts of novels, I might fit a short story in. What I don't like to do is stop mid-draft of something, write something else, and then try to pick up whatever I was writing on beforehand. That's what I find really difficult, because I can only keep so much in my head. My memory's not that prodigious these days. So yeah, I like to be fully immersed in one thing. And then if I'm at a stage where I can put it aside and work on something else, it actually helps, because it takes me into a different world, and then it gives distance on the other project. So it can kind of work for me as well as against me. But yeah, I don't like to break off in the middle of things either.
Is there something or that you'd look back to, Ali, who was starting this, or maybe the future Ali's listening to this out there? Is there anything you would want previous you to know about writing, about life?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it would be nice to say, you know what, you can do this as well, and just feel free to write. There's something oddly scary about starting to write, I think. I don't know if you felt this when you first thought, I'll try and write a short story or just a snippet of something. I suppose you're putting something out there to be judged, aren't you? And it's very easy to stand back and judge things. It's harder to craft something and work at it and make it better. But it's just having that freedom, I think. Say, enjoy it. But, artists doodle. Nobody kind of points at the doodles and says, well, nobody's hanging that in the National Gallery, are they? They don't get that kind of level of judgment. So, yeah, going a little bit easier on ourselves would be nice, I think.
Going easier on ourselves and having the fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, remembering why we all love this weird thing that we do in the first place. Yeah. So when I was writing the book, I went and stayed in the places where it's set. So it starts out in Sands End, where we've spent quite a lot of holidays walking up down the beach with the dogs and just getting to know that place really well. But I also went and stayed in the Peak District, and I found that incredibly helpful for writing authentic descriptions and just letting a sense of place bleed through onto the page, particularly when you're looking at folk tales that are very rooted in a particular land. I think just being there, breathing it in. And I had some really odd encounters that fed into the actual plot of the book. So where I stayed, every evening at dusk, there was a wild hare that just came loping down the drive. And it would sometimes just sit and look at the house with it, and I'd look at its eyes and see how almost unreadable and wild this creature was. And, things like that found their way into the book and started to shape the plot. And I went to visit one of the key locations in it, Blakemere Pool, which is one of the sort of bleakest, wildest, most haunted sort of places. And a cyclist came along and started very randomly just telling me oh, there's a mermaid lives in that pool. Is it, you know, the story's told about it, and started telling me this mermaid story. And I hadn't even said, I'm here to research a book that's to do with these mermaid legends. And it just seemed to happen like that. Wherever I went, people would randomly start telling me about mermaid things. So
Wow.
It felt almost spooky. It felt almost magical, and it was lovely to have those experiences to feed into the book. So I think, you know, travelling to places and getting a sense of place is really inspirational to me.
That's wonderful. So, Ava Morwood, Alison Littlewood, thank you for joining the Writers' Gym.
Thank you, Rachel.
You've visited the Writers' Gym with author and coach Dr Rachel Knightley. Production and sound design are by Ashley Lexine, and theme music is by Chris Gregory. To join a Writers' Gym workout online or in London, as a guest or as a member, visit writersgym.com or email thewritersgym@rachelknightley.com.